Hey, what's up and how's it going? This is Toby, and if you are asking yourself on how to get started with your AR project and you're not sure what kind of tools to use for what kind of purpose or what to learn even for the project that you might envision, then I got you covered in this video because I want to talk a bit about the current tools that are available for creating augmented reality, shall it be in the web, on social platforms, or as a good old application, and what kind of use cases these tools are perfectly suited for, what are advantages and disadvantages. So without any further ado, let's get started. The first question you got to ask yourself when thinking about augmented reality development is kind of the scope that you want to develop. So do you want to create something that is rather lightweight and simple, which would be, for example, like a fit on of glasses, or maybe something like fitting a watch in augmented reality, or maybe a very simple game? Or is it something more complex that might have several scenes, like a more advanced game or something? So let's first of all talk about the lightweight approach to augmented reality. So if, for example, you want to create some kind of mini game or like a tryout or maybe a very simple visualization, most likely WebAR or social AR are the right tools for you. WebAR basically is completely independent of any kind of app. So you don't have to download anything. You just go to a website and essentially you will be able to have some kind of AR effect. And there are several different tools that I will very quickly iterate on. But essentially, some of the best tools are Eighth Wall. Then from ZepWorks, there is Metacraft, and then Designer. And then for very simple stuff, there is the model viewer. And if you're already using Unity and you want to do WebXR, then there's also the Needle engine that I've been creating a tutorial on only shortly. And as you can see here, this is actually not some kind of app, but you are going through your browser, just entering an URL. You can also go through kind of your laptop or any other device that would have a webcam. Of course, this will only work with face filters. But it's a great way to reach many, many people and give them kind of a simple augmented reality effect, right? And the other tools I just mentioned are also in kind of this complexity order. So while the model viewer here is just a very simple HTML embed, as you can see here, that's all basically that you got to put into your website to have this 3D model that you can also then see in augmented reality. And I actually also did a tutorial on that a bit earlier on. Let's see. Yeah, so here it is, and you can see that this would be kind of the way that you can also show an augmented reality model, a very simple one using WebAR, and then I would say kind of ZepWorks Designer is like the next easiest tool that is a no-code editor, but you have some more options to create interactivity. So as you can see, you also can implement some kind of buttons and maybe some animations or something. And yeah, so that's pretty cool as well. I would say Metacraft is then the more complex version, and this one is allowing you basically to code. So it's a full-on, you would say, like a web game engine that also allows to use any kind of JavaScript framework. So if you want to build something more complex that has a lot of interactivity or something, then this would be the best tool. And I would say the most complex tool or the most capable tool as well is Eighth Wall. And this one also features stuff like multiplayer, for example, which is pretty cool. And it also has, so the way that you code is you're using a so-called ECS system. And for people who are not so technical, it's basically the most performant editor that will allow you to also create kind of the most complex systems. And it also allows you to actually build two devices. And it also has kind of a ton of modules that you can add. For example, something like in-game transactions. And so if we're talking about WebAR, I would say the biggest advantage, of course, here is that you don't need any kind of app, right? It's super accessible. It's just one click away from a website. You could hide it behind some kind of QR code, and it will also be only one project that will work on any device such as iOS or Android, or even XR glasses like the Quest 3 or the Apple Vision Pro. So it's extremely versatile, and this is amazing. And I would say that WebAR is currently mostly suitable for marketing, e-commerce, or even education. For example, basically showing a very simple scene and portraying maybe two, three, four objects or something. That's kind of where the core case is. Well, while it's very accessible, it also has downsides, and that's, for example, that the apps can only have a low complexity, right? So you can't have something that is has a really high fidelity and many physics effects or something, because this is going to really strain on your phone's performance. And as the web browser can't access kind of the full low-level performance of the phone, you will run into kind of performance limitations, and this will definitely make the experience a lot worse for your users. And also, of course, you have to re-download the AR experience anytime, and you also are not able to save stuff for the user, at least. Well, you could, for example, have a local token, for example, that lives inside of the browser, but sometimes the user might just clean it or it will be deleted for some reason. So let's imagine that we wanted to do a furniture visualization that IKEA would do. Then you're not able to really save what maybe the user actually envisioned in their space as easily as you could do that with an app. And then also monetization is definitely more difficult. So while these experiences here are pretty cool and you can already see some AR stuff going on here, of course, if you actually want to make money with the AR app itself, so if you want to kind of have in-game purchases that you would usually have, or in-app purchases that you would usually have within your iOS or Android app, then this is a lot more difficult. And as far as I know, the only tool that has something in this realm is Eighth Wall, but I also haven't really figured it out so much on how far that's possible. But nevertheless, it's of course more friction, because if I have my app on my iPhone, I'll just pay with my saved account and payment data, while on the web I would have to register and give my credit card information, and people might not want to do this. So kind of getting money from a web AR application is definitely a lot harder. And if you want to do that, then I would more suggest to go for app project. So another thing is that if we compare this to apps, then apps usually have also more features. For example, if we compare this to Lightship, which we're going to take a look on later on, we do have a lot more features. For example, there's stuff like object detection or meshing to recreate scenes, and yeah, navigation, all of that. So WebAR is really limited to the basics. So placing objects, having, for example, small interactions like triggering an animation or changing the color, or if you have some kind of 3D configurator where you might can add some modules to some kind of product or so, then this is okay. But if you want to go further than that, then it's going to be more difficult to implement that using WebAR. So if you want to learn more about how to use WebAR, I actually made a few tutorials here on Needle, which is not a bad tool. So for example, here a face filter effect, and this is actually a cross-platform game that I'm building here. So this is also pretty cool, which is on the Quest, also simply just a website where you can go into AR and then play a little game. And you can also play this on your phone, as you can see, as well as just in the browser. So this is amazing about WebXR. If you want to learn something, here's a Needle tutorial. And if you want to have more tutorials on these other tools like Ethwall or Zep Works tools, so Designer or Metacraft, then please leave a comment below, and we'll see if I can do some nice tutorials on these tools as well. So the next thing that I want to talk about is social AR. And this is actually another great option. This will usually be either a TikTok or a Lens Studio as Snapchat filter. So there's the TikTok Effect House and Snapchat's Lens Studio. And these are pretty amazing if you want to have some kind of, I would say, like viral marketing experiences. For example, a small game that revolves around any kind of product launch or brand or maybe music or movie that is about to come out. And in most cases, in terms of performance and what you can do, it is very similar to WebAR, so it's a bit limited, but you still have many options to be creative here and to offer a fun experience. And I would say that spreading, if you want to really spread something around the world as easy as possible, um, kind of want to promote something, then social AR is really the way to go, because it's more or less the same as creating a video, like some interactive content that people can use and have fun with. And it's a lot easier to distribute that, right? Because if you, for example, create a web AR experience, then you also have to make sure on how to get people to your web AR experience, right? So you have to kind of find out how do I lead people to my website and make them actually use it, which is easier if you have like an e-commerce store or something, because you got to do that anyways. But with these social filters, they can actually spread by themselves and become more popular, which is pretty amazing in my opinion. So I would say if your goal is to generate as much attention for something as possible, then you can go with social AR. And I also made a bunch of tutorials here on my channel. For example, this one is for TikTok, a try-on effect with some kind of watch here. I also did a ton of videos on Lens Studio. For example, here we even have hand tracking, which is quite advanced. So picking up a 3D object and placing it. You also have meshing. So actually Lens Studio is pretty advanced in my opinion. It's technically, I would say, even the second most advanced tool after Unity with some plugins. So that's pretty amazing in my opinion. But yeah, so there are lots of tutorials on my channel. If you want to learn more about using Lens Studio or Effect House, then you'll find a lot there. But there are also times where you just wanted to build something that is more complex, such a game like Pokemon Go, for example, or simply just a more sophisticated experience that is supposed to run locally offline. So you don't have to download it all the time when you want to use it. For example, some kind of more interactive educational app that has not only one object that it shows, but actually a whole catalog of stuff that you can interact with. And maybe you also want to use some kind of shared AR where people are co-localized. And so they have like two phones, for example, and can interact in the same experience. And that is only possible so far, would be with Eighth Wall, but it's a bit easier actually, I guess, in terms of performance with tools like Unity, for example. And Unity is a pretty amazing game engine. In my opinion, it is for augmented reality development the best kind of tool to create offline or app experiences. One example is for this Batman Arkham Shadow game that they made. This is a MetaQuest game, and there are also many XR games and mobile games that are made with Unity. It's kind of the go-to engine. You may ask, what about Unreal? So Unreal is also pretty good. I personally think that Unreal is an amazing tool, but I would say, and please write in a comment if you disagree with that, but it's more leaning towards AAA, graphically expensive games that just look amazing and run on the latest consoles or the latest hardware. So while Unreal Engine is pretty great, I would say that for mobile and XR, Unity Engine should be the go-to. And this one will allow you to create cross-platform AR applications, for example, with AR Foundation, that will run on Android and iOS devices. And the big advantage here is that you can utilize the whole resources of the phone, so you can build more complex experiences. You can also save preferences of users pretty easy, like scores, or for example, you can do on-device mapping. So let's imagine we had that kind of IKEA app where we want the user to visualize their room with furniture. Then we could use Unity and the plugin from the Niantic SDK, so which was called Lightship only a few months ago, I guess. And so this one will basically allow us to do on-device mapping. So these were the sample scenes we were just looking at. But essentially, since it can utilize the whole phone's capabilities, we could just scan our room and then place some furniture in there and then reload the room, and the furniture would be at the exact same place it has been before, which is quite amazing. And there are a lot of other cool tools as well that we could be utilizing and using. And this also goes, for example, for multiplayer, which is also pretty amazing. So if you want to do something that is shared, then probably going with apps and Unity for now is the way to go. Again, Eighth Wall does offer something in this regard, but in my opinion, I would go with more resources and just having a better experience here. So while Unity offers a lot of advantages, like the AR Foundation, so the built-in tool that has a lot of features, as well as plugins like, for example, Lightship or Niantic Spatial, however we want to call it, and also offers most of the time some early access to Meta developer tools for augmented reality and also virtual reality. Downsides are that, of course, you have to do all the process to get your app on the phone, and this can be really cumbersome. So, for example, you have to create different builds in Unity for Android and iOS. Then you have to get a developer account for iOS, for example. You have to then get Xcode. So Xcode will only work, for example, on Mac devices. So if you, for example, happen to have a Windows laptop or work with Linux, then you're not even able to install your build onto your device. So you would have to get some kind of Mac for that, or you're just going to go with Android. And then, of course, this will always take time. Build times can be a few seconds up to a few minutes, even depending on the complexity of your app. And then, of course, also going cross-platform in between not only iOS and Android, but actually between mobile phones and XR devices like the Meta Quest 3 is still quite difficult. So it's not really possible to build just one scene and have it out of the box work on both kind of platforms. But you would have to do a lot of adjustments where you could simply build two different scenes if you wanted to do kind of the same game, yeah, for both kind of platforms. So yeah, iteration cycles can be a lot longer here. So that's definitely a disadvantage. But if you want to have a more complex application that runs offline and it can actually generate revenue, I guess then you will have to do some kind of app as of right now. Maybe it will again get a bit different when Eighth Wall pushes more of in-app monetization and maybe creating accounts or something. But for now, I would definitely recommend going here with Unity. And if you're interested in building AR with Unity, there are literally 1 million tutorials on my channel. So I guess I just started doing this Unity 6 basic tutorial series, which is a great way to start, but there are also more advanced tutorials like this tutorial is also pretty good, how to make an AR game in Unity, beginner friendly. But I also made some stuff on object detection, on multiplayer, on location-based experiences, on character movement. Yeah, and by the way, actually, so I've talked about this in this tutorial here. So Unity has a pretty good AR simulator, and this is quite important because you can't always test out your stuff on device all the time, right? Because even though it might be very fast to build to device, you also want to kind of test out different environments. You want to test out how it would be outside, inside, in different rooms. Maybe you want to do object detection of some kind of flower and you don't have any flowers inside your room. So having a good simulator is pretty much key. And actually, so Lightship and Unity have a pretty amazing simulator. Eighth Wall also has one, and Lens Studio has a pretty great simulator. Effect House has simulation videos, which are okay, I guess. But Eighth Wall, Lens Studio, and Unity have amazing ways to simulate all kinds of stuff in editor, even multiplayer for Unity, which just makes it a lot faster. So developer iterations, development iterations are pretty important for AR development as well. And so while there are many tools and features, and there are probably also a million tools that I haven't covered in this video, I also want to point out the importance of resources and tutorials, because you can have the best tool in the world. If there are not enough resources and tutorials on that tool, it will be very frustrating to learn. As soon as you run into any kind of error or mistake or thing that you can't solve by yourself, well, it will not go well. And for that, I also like Unity a lot because it's been around since I get 20 years. So there's so much documentation and so many people using it that you will always find some kind of solution to your problem. So this is also something to take a look at. I would say also in this regard, Unity has by far the largest amount of documentation and yeah, kind of advice I would say you could get, also in terms of forums or something. Then probably Lens Studio and Effect House, because there are so many people building for these two tools that you'll find a lot of help in Discords and stuff. And for these web AR tools, I'm not so sure. So they do have a documentation which kind of helps. But in terms of community, I would guess that they do have the smallest community. But overall, I would say that definitely the ZapWorks tools like Metacraft, they are a bit easier to use. So you might need less help and samples and documentation compared to Eighth Wall. So this is definitely a very powerful tool that also I would say needs some time to learn and to get used to. All right, but that's it for a quick overview on what are, in my opinion, some of the best tools out there to create augmented reality and what kind of experiences I would use those tools for. And with that said, let me know what you guys think. What kind of tool would you use and what kind of AR projects are you thinking about building or maybe are already currently in the building process? I would be happy to discuss in the comments. But until then, as always, thanks a lot for watching and see you next time.